My mother-in-law casually broke the news to my stunned self. We're going to be living together now. We just remodeled it into a duplex for convenience. The property is in your name, right, Emma? Sorry to bother you, but could you please cover the $80,000 remodeling bill? My mother-in-law and husband laughed triumphantly. Witnessing this, I, filled with resolve, was about to confront them with the truth that even my husband didn't know, along with the evidence. I am Emma Davis, 26 years old. I live a bit away from the downtown, in a nature-rich area, and work an office job while drawing illustrations as a hobby. Lately, I enjoy uploading my drawings on social media and reading the comments on them daily. I have a husband who is 3 years older than me, and we're enjoying our married life in a favorite old farmhouse that we bought right after our wedding. But there has been a visitor to this house once a month since we got married, who always gives me a headache. Emma! Emma! I'm here! Please open up quickly! Hearing the persistent banging on the sliding front door, I rushed to it. Ah, mother-in-law. I'll open it right away. Even though there's a perfectly good doorbell right next to the door, I try to make a smile and open the sliding door. There are so many bugs around here. It's so annoying. Is George still at work? Poor thing. Even on Saturday. Oh, I brought some of his favorite food. I see a woman holding a large bag, looking tired from waiting beyond the door. While dealing with her rapid-fire chatter, I paced on a fake smile. The once-a-month visitor is my husband's mother. That is, my mother-in-law. My husband being an only child, she insists on taking care of him even after our marriage. And to my gratitude, she even instructs me on house chores. The last time she came to our house, she rearranged all the food in the fridge, and I had to start the next day's breakfast preparation from hunting down the ingredients. I recall my husband repeatedly telling me before we got married, if my parents ever need care, we'll live together. I want you to understand that. I'm disappointed to think I might have to give up this beloved old house when the time comes, but I've come to accept it. What bothers me more is the thought of living with this mother-in-law 24/7. Sorry for my husband. It fills me with a bit of gloom. Fast forward 2 years into our farmhouse married life. I heard my husband that my father-in-law had slipped on the stairs at home and broke his leg. They will need our help from now on. Let's live together, just as we discussed before our marriage. Yes, I'm worried too, so I think it's a good idea. Can I continue my drawing hobby? I was worried about my father-in-law's health, so I agreed without hesitation to move in together. However, I was anxious that being caught up in housework and taking care of my in-laws might rob me of the time for my hobby of drawing. Whether he was aware of my anxiety or not, my husband just said, "I want you to prioritize the house," and left the room, headed to his office. Being left alone in my room, I felt like I had half given up on my selfish husband. While looking back at the illustrations I had drawn up until now, one by one, I began to sort out my feelings. Just as I had made up my mind to live with them, an unexpected event occurred. While I was working as usual at my workplace, I suddenly felt numbness in my hands and feet and was instantly overwhelmed by intense dizziness and collapsed. Thanks to a colleague who immediately called an ambulance, my life was not in danger, but it turned out to be a stroke at a young age after medical examination. Although I had been pointed out high blood pressure in health checks before, I regretted neglecting it without going to the hospital. Including detailed examination, surgery, and rehabilitation, the hospitalization period turned out to be about 2 months. From the discovery of the disease to the hospitalization progressed at a brisk pace, and she realizes that her husband has given her very little concern. After being diagnosed with a stroke at a young age, I took out my phone with trembling hands and called my husband right away. The only thing I could hear from the phone was a disappointing voice saying, "I see, so the living together will be postponed, huh?" I couldn't respond to the fact that he was worried about the future life at my in-laws' house, not about my body. Since my father-in-law is still in the hospital with a fracture, there was no need to worry about caregiving, which was a blessing in disguise that I could focus on treatment. Also, since we don't have children, there's no need to worry about that. Suddenly, the face of my mother-in-law, who always says, "I want to see my grandchild's face soon," every time we meet, pops up, and as if to shake it off, I picked up the sketchbook nearby. Recently, I've been too busy preparing to live with my in-laws and going through examinations since I collapsed to have time for my favorite illustrations. Once I start living with my in-laws, I'll probably lose even more time to draw. I decided to think of this hospitalization period as the last free time that God has given me, and decided to fully enjoy my hobby. When this period is over, I decided in my heart to do my best for my husband and in-laws, whether it's housework or anything else. The 2-month hospital stay ended in a flash, and finally, the day of discharge. My husband casually asked if he should come to pick me up, but I wanted to spend some time alone until I got home, so I declined, feeling a bit guilty. While I was in the bus, I saw the familiar landscape outside the window and realized that I was already near home. The sunlight hitting the beautiful green leaves was dazzlingly sparkling, making me feel indescribable as I thought, this is goodbye to this rich, natural place. Since my in-laws' house is located relatively close to the city center, my life will change drastically from now on. Feeling a little lonely, I slowly got off the bus at the familiar bus stop. As I was heading towards my soon-to-be farewell home, I suddenly stopped in my tracks at the sight that appeared before me. There was supposed to be my favorite old private house here, but instead, there was a house I had never seen before. Since I had been in the hospital for about 2 months, I checked the position of the surrounding buildings and the way I came, wondering if I had mistaken the location. But it was not a mistake after all. There's no use wandering around, so I timidly pressed the intercom of the house. Then a familiar voice said, "Yes." The voice was undoubtedly my husband. Still feeling confused, I quietly answered, "It's Michelle," to the intercom. The front door creaked open, and my husband in his casual attire came out. "Aha, welcome home. You came home earlier than I expected. I had the day off today. I could have picked you up." "George, what happened to our house? Why has it changed so much?" I interrupted my husband, who seemed relaxed, maybe just woke up, his hair mist, to ask my question with a sense of disbelief. However, disregarding my anxiousness, George only responded with a vague, "Huh? What's up? What happened?" without intending to answer my question. Just then, I heard laughter coming from inside the house. Thinking it couldn't be, I pushed past my husband and headed toward the living room. When I opened the unfamiliar door leading to the living room, I saw my mother-in-law lying on the couch watching TV. She was clutching her stomach and laughing while watching the TV screen. "Why is my mother-in-law in this house?" "Oh, Michelle, welcome back. Hospital stays can be long, but don't worry. I took care of the house while you were gone." I wonder what this house stuff my mother-in-law is talking about. Could it be chores? Or, with an overwhelming bad feeling, I pressed my mother-in-law on why the old house had changed so much. Without showing any sign of guilt, she blurted out, "Well, we're all going to live together, right? So I just remodeled it into a duplex to make it more comfortable." The phrase, "just remodeled it into a duplex," kept replaying in my mind. My mother-in-law was always the type to interfere with our life, but I never expected her to remodel our house without permission. Moreover, weren't we supposed to start living together in my in-laws' house, which is closer to the city center? Every time my mother-in-law visited the old house here, she used to complain about the bugs and the short walk from the station. Despite that, why? A lot of things have changed. Oh, and there's something else important I have to tell you. Turning off the TV she had been watching, my mother-in-law whispered to me with a grin, "The remodeling cost a bit. I believe the title to this house is under your name, Michelle. I'm sorry, but could you handle the payment?" Chuckles, not a hint of apology in them, my mother-in-law said, "It's $80,000. And her smile deepened. Remodeling cost? The title to this house? $80,000? The unexpected words felt like a punch to the head, and I felt my legs are shaking. I can't even find the words to reply, while I was staring at her, mother-in-law, who was stunned and laughing fearlessly. My husband, who was at the entrance, opened the living room door and sneaked in. The moment I saw him, my feet naturally headed towards him, holding a faint hope that he would surely be on my side. I relayed to my husband exactly what my mother-in-law had said, clinging to a desperate hope for his reaction. But all I received from him was a cold response. "Well, that's about right. Take care of it, will you?" That's right. That's the kind of man he is. When I collapsed from a stroke, he was more concerned about our living arrangements than my health. He's a man who will stop if his mother says green means stop, and will go if she says red means go. A man who always thinks his mother is right. The discomfort and dissatisfaction I'd felt toward my husband escalate once it flooded. I was done. I thought from the bottom of my heart, I would throw this family. I understand now, George. I am going to divorce you. And mother-in-law? No, Cecilia. Please handle the renovation costs on your own. After declaring this all at once, I turned my back on them and moved to leave the room as quickly as possible. But it seemed they weren't going to let me go so easily. I've been losing interest in you anyway, so it's no big deal. But remember, this house is in your name, Emma, so you have a responsibility to pay. That's right. Feel free to leave, but please settle your dues first. I was astonished at the two of them who selfishly made their claims. I cannot help but let out a sigh. Surely, if I turned around, I'd see their smug faces grinning in victory. I refused to look back, standing tall as I replied, You keep saying the house is in my name, George, but did you forget? The ownership has been transferred to you. I revealed the truth. However, they only laughed at me and believed I was lying, just to avoid paying. That's when I brought up how George had asked me to change the property's ownership when we got married, as he didn't want the house to be in his wife's name for appearance's sake. Since I didn't particularly care about the property title, I had immediately transferred it to his name. Upon hearing this, the laughter of the two who had been so complacent until now abruptly stopped, and I could feel the panic gradually setting in. I don't recall saying such a thing. There's no proof anyway. Anticipating this response, I turned back to face them, walked past them, and opened a drawer of a shelf from our old house. Let's see. It should be somewhere around... here it is. This is the proof. I took out a document from the drawer where the property and the house ownership were listed and showed it in front of their faces. When I carefully pointed to the part that said the ownership was in George's name, my husband's face turned pale. That's fraud. I never thought you'd actually do it, and I definitely can't pay such a huge sum of $80,000. I was disgusted with my husband, who started yelling as soon as he realized the payment obligation was on him. Since a decent conversation seems impossible, let's communicate through lawyers from now on. Cecilia, your son seems to be in quite a pickle, so please take good care of him from now on. Beside my loud husband, I smiled at my mother-in-law, who was standing dazedly, and finally turned my back on them, leaving their home for good. After that, my husband called several times, but I chose to ignore him entirely, decide to communicate formally through a lawyer. Given our already strained relationship and problems with my mother-in-law, the divorce was settled without any issues. In addition, regarding the matter that my husband insistently shouted when he left, change of name is a fraud, was decided that there was an agreement between us because it was changed when they got married 2 years ago. My lawyer assured me with a smile that this is neither fraud nor anything illegal. With that, all the uncertainty inside me was completely dispelled. It seemed that the cost of renovating that house was supposed to be paid in full by me as soon as I got discharged from the hospital. Wanting to applaud, I now appreciate the well-crafted, spiteful act of pushing me into hell just after I had endured surgery and rehabilitation and finally got discharged due to illness. In the end, since the house was in my husband's name, it was his duty to make the lump sum payment, and he ended up strangling himself. In addition, I was able to secure alimony after the successful divorce. My husband, who had been hit with a claim for a total amount that he could not possibly pay off, had either borrowed money from dangerous places or hadn't. While I was fighting with my husband and mother-in-law, I received an apology from my father-in-law, Bob, who had been hospitalized with a broken leg, saying, "I'm sorry for my wife and son's behavior." Of course, it didn't seem that Bob was involved in this matter. However, there's no denying that for 2 years after our marriage, he had ignored his wife and my cold husband. After replying briefly to Bob's message, I decided to cut all ties with that family and start a new life. Since then, my health has gradually improved, and I was able to return to work. When I was married, I used to draw illustrations while being mindful of my husband's gaze, but now I can immerse myself in it as much as I want, whenever I want. Originally, I was just drawing as a hobby, but now I get job offers from the social networking site where I post my illustrations, and I now spend more time drawing for work than for pleasure. Now I'm heading to see an old farmhouse in a somewhat rural town. My current dream is to buy this old farmhouse with the alimony from my husband and my savings, and to open an art studio. Today, I'm about to take the first step towards this dream. On the bus, as I gazed out at the scenery, I found myself recalling that day. The day I left the hospital changed my life forever. The abundant natural scenery outside is the same as that day, but my feelings are clear, and I'm excited about the new life that's about to begin. The leaves on the trees, illuminated by the sunlight, look so bright that they dazzled.